Have you ever felt that pressure? The constant push to be exceptional, to stand out, to be anything but average? Well, today, we're going to flip that idea on its head.
I mean, let's be real. We live in a world that is just obsessed with the outliers. The billionaires, the child prodigies, the viral sensations. We're constantly told to be special and escape the middle. And that creates this massive anxiety around a really simple question. Is it okay if I'm just normal?
And this feeling is everywhere, right? This Reddit user just nails it. There's this deep cultural pressure that makes being average feel like you're failing, like you just aren't trying hard enough. But where did this whole idea even come from?
To really get to the bottom of our fear of being average, we've got to travel back in time. We need to find out who even invented the idea of a normal person to begin with. And let me tell you, the answer is probably not what you're thinking.
You know, it's a surprisingly new idea. It didn't come from some ancient philosopher or a great thinker. Nope, it came from a totally different world, astronomy. So let's meet the guy who, kind of by accident, got this whole ball rolling. A 19th century Belgian astronomer by the name of Adolphe Quetelet.
Quetelet's life took a really sharp turn. See, he dreamed of finding these beautiful, predictable laws in the heavens. But then the chaos of the Belgian Revolution literally shut his observatory down. So, frustrated and desperate to find order somewhere, he turned his gaze from the stars down to society. He was hoping to find the same kind of predictable patterns in people.
And this was his big aha moment. In astronomy, scientists would take a bunch of different measurements of, say, a planet's position, and they'd average them all together. Why? To cancel out the tiny little human errors in each measurement and find the one true position. Quetelet decided to do the exact same thing, but with people.
Okay, but here is the twist, and it is a big one. It's all about how he interpreted that average. Today we hear average and we think, meh, mediocre. But to the man who invented the concept, it meant the absolute opposite.
He basically just copied and pasted his logic from astronomy. He figured, just like every single measurement of a star has a tiny bit of error, every individual person is a slight deviation, an error, from some perfect human template. So if you want to find that ideal human, you just have to average everyone together.
So let's be super clear about this. For Quetelet, the average wasn't boring. It was beautiful. It was the flawless ideal that nature was actually aiming for. Any deviation from that average, whether you were taller or shorter, bigger or smaller, was seen as a natural blemish, a kind of deformity.
Which leaves us with a huge question, right? If the guy who invented the whole concept of the average person thought it was perfection, how on earth did we get to a point where being called average feels like a slap in the face?
Well, as it turns out, two major forces in our modern world took Quetelet's idea and just completely flipped it on its head. Our 24/7 media world and a funny little quirk of our own psychology.
I mean, as author Mark Manson points out, we are just bombarded with the exceptional. Think about your social media feed. It's a nonstop parade of the best and the absolute worst of the worst. This endless stream of outliers totally warps our perception. It makes the extraordinary seem normal, and it makes our normal everyday lives feel totally invisible and inadequate.
And get this, it's not just the media messing with our heads. Our own brains are kind of rigged against being average. Psychologists call it the better than average effect. It's this weird little quirk where most of us, and I mean most of us, instinctively believe we're above average. Why? Because we hear the word average and our brain translates it to mediocre, not the statistical middle. We're hardwired to see it as a baseline we have to beat.
So what happens when you combine a media culture that only shows you the extremes with a built-in psychological bias to look down on the middle? Well, you get our modern anxiety. Being in the middle of the pack, which, let's be honest, is statistically where most of us are in most things, suddenly starts to feel a lot like failure.
But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if being in the middle isn't a weakness at all? What if it's actually a kind of superpower? There's this fascinating phenomenon that tells a completely different story about the power of being average. All right, check out this story from way back in 1907. A scientist named Francis Galton was at a county fair, and he watched as hundreds of people all tried to guess the weight of an ox. Not a single person got it right. But then he did something clever. He took the average of all their guesses, and it was accurate to within 1% of the ox's actual weight. It was more accurate than any single expert, any farmer, or any butcher in the crowd.
And this wisdom of crowds thing, it's not a one-off. It pops up everywhere. Study after study has shown that the collective average judgment of a group is consistently more accurate than isolated individuals, even the experts, at everything from forecasting elections to predicting sports games.
Think about it like this, like you're an engineer building a bridge. You don't design the bridge to withstand a once-in-a-million-year meteor strike. You design it to be strong and stable under normal, average conditions. The average provides the structural stability for everything else. In the same way, being an average person isn't a failure to be a superhero. It's being part of the stable, reliable foundation that allows society to even function.
Okay, so what does all of this actually mean for you and me in our day-to-day lives? How do we take this idea and get off that exhausting treadmill of trying to be exceptional all the time? This comment just hits the nail on the head. Maybe the problem is that we've been measuring average on a completely broken scale. We obsess about being above average in wealth or status or how many followers we have. But what if we just shifted our focus?
Exactly. Because the moment you give yourself permission to be average in those external, often superficial things, you become free. You're no longer measuring your life against some external yardstick. Instead, you can finally start listening to your own internal compass and focus on what truly matters to you.
So maybe the real goal isn't to escape the middle of the bell curve when it comes to fame or fortune. Maybe the real challenge, the real mark of an excellent life, is to aim for the far right end of the curve on things like your character, your integrity, your compassion, to be exceptionally normal.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world that screams at us to be extraordinary, what if the most radical, fulfilling, and, yes, extraordinary thing you can do is to simply master the art of being a genuinely good, dependable, average person? What do you think?